Hello and welcome to day 5 of Amonkhet preview season. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Taryn, and this is MTG Traders. Let's go over the new cards spoiled today. So let's start things off with Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons, a 1 black and 1 green 2/2 human cleric. Whenever it deals damage to a player, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. And whenever you put a -1/-1 counter on a creature, you may create a 1/1 snake token with Death Touch. For 2 mana, this does quite a lot, and this being in a Winding Constrictor deck makes it that much more interesting. So I definitely think it'll see some draft and limited play, but I also think it may see standard play, especially because of how cheap it is and the ability it does. Because the interaction with Winding Constrictor is so relevant, I think a black-green snake deck is actually in the future. Only standard brews, and it may just be kitchen table. I believe this card is actually modeled after Cleopatra, which is super flavorful for the set. And look at that art, it's gorgeous. Moving on to another card, we've got Soulscar Mage, a 1 red mana, 1/2 human wizard. It's got prowess, and if you have a source that deals non-combat damage to a creature, instead put -1/-1 counters on that creature instead. Okay, this card is actually really good, and I think the likelihood of a mono-red standard burn deck or a standard aggro deck is in the future. It actually creates a situation where creatures who were once really powerful that you couldn't get over are now weaker, so you can actually deal with them. It's making sure that your smaller creatures can match up to the bigger creatures on the board. I think that is extremely important, and in the long game it'll pay out even more. Moving on to another red spell, we've got Hazoret's Favor for 2 colorless and 1 red mana for an enchantment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may have target creature get +2/+0 until end of turn. It also gains haste. If you do, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. I'm not so sure about this. It's wildly aggressive, and I usually like that kind of thing, but I think the downside is just so demonstrably worse than what you want to do on the board that you just don't want to play it. I think in limited and draft it may actually fare well, but standard, you know, I don't really know. Unless we're kind of making some weird servo deck, or maybe that blue-red Drake deck that may become a thing because of Amonkhet. But this is just such a strange interaction. Because yes, while you're getting in for 2 points of damage and whatever the creature is, you're losing that creature. And so unless you just have gas for days, this is actually going to hurt you in the long run. Now this is a May ability, so it doesn't have to always be activated. So I'm kind of in the middle of the road here. I'm not too hot on this card. Again, limited in draft, it may see some play. I'm not so sure about standard. Next up, we've got a story beat card, Cruel Reality. It's 5 colorless and 2 black mana for an enchantment or a curse. Enchant player. At the beginning of the enchanted player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. If the player can't, he or she loses 5 life. Okay, so for Commander, this is hilarious, and it's gonna make you like the most hated person on the board. Any other format, except for probably Sealed, I don't really see this being a thing. 7 mana is a lot, guys. And sure, it does a ton of stuff that's actually really cool, but because of how expensive it is, you're probably never gonna play it in Standard. You may not pick it in Draft, and the only place it's actually kind of useful is in Commander with multiplayer games. But if you do play it in Sealed or Draft, this is definitely like a win condition if you can last that long. It's super deadly, but again, super expensive. So there's the trade-off. Moving on to a blue card, New Perspectives is 5 colorless and 1 blue mana for an enchantment. When New Perspectives enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards. As long as you have 7 or more cards in hand, you may pay 0 instead of a cycling cost. Okay, for 6 mana, draw 3 cards, and then cycling is free. Note that's colorless cycling and not mana-specific cycling. I really like this card, and I don't think it's gonna be that good for Standard, obviously, but I think it may see some fringe tabletop play just because of what it does and the ability it gives. In Sealed and in Draft though, drawing 3 cards is exactly what you want to be doing. And being able to have cycling for free on colorless cycling, I think that's really great too. So for Sealed and Draft, awesome pick. For Standard, it's just not fast enough. Now, it may see some fringe play, but I'm not sure. Moving on to a rare male angel, we've got Angel of Sanctions, 3 colorless and 2 white mana for a 3/4 angel. It's got flying, and whenever Angel of Sanctions enter the battlefield, you may exile non-land permanent until Angel of Sanctions leaves the battlefield. It also has Embalm for 5 colorless and 1 white mana. This is a 3/4 flying Oblivion Ring that has recursion. That is very good, and I think this will see some standard play. Again, being able to Oblivion Ring something, and then if that creature dies, no problem. The next turn you can bring it back with Oblivion Ring again. And keep in mind that this is also not a legendary creature, so the Embalm ability could be populated. So keep that in mind for Commander and Modern players. Being able to populate and Oblivion Ring something is just dirty. In Draft and Sealed, this is a 3/4 flyer that Oblivion Ring something, and that is insane. Always pick it, Windmill Slam for the win. And moving on to a somehow worse natural obsolescence, we've got Dissenters Deliverance for 1 colorless and 1 green mana for an instant. Destroy target artifact. It has cycling for 1 green mana. This is really kind of sad. In Draft and Sealed, definitely going to see some sideboard play, sideboard interaction. I think it's definitely going to be killing those legendary artifacts, going to be killing the monuments, things like that. In Standard, it's almost there. The reason Natural Obsolescence is so good is because it does exactly what it says, which is it puts the card at the bottom of the owner's library. That is almost more impactful than putting it in the graveyard thanks to all the recursion that's going on with artifacts. So say they have a pumped up Scrap Heap Scrounger, you have to kill it, it goes to the graveyard, well then they just get it back if they have a creature in the graveyard as well. But Natural Obstinate says, well, it goes in the bottom of the deck, and they're gonna have to either tutor for it and draw for it, and they're not gonna do that. So while this card is very good, and it has cycling, I don't know, I don't think it'll see standard play. It's like right there. People are gonna try and make it work with the cycling, and I give them credit for that, but I just, you know, I don't know. But again, in sealed and in limited, great card. Moving on to a multicolor card, we've got Bounty of the Luxor. 2 colorless and 1 green and 1 blue for an enchantment. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, which is main phase 1, remove all flood counters from Bounty of the Luxor. If no counters were removed this way, put a counter on Bounty of the Luxor and draw a card. Otherwise, add 1 specific colorless, 1 blue, and 1 green mana to your mana pool. The wording on this card is very strange. I understand what it's saying, so basically you break it down like 4 mana, draw a card your next turn, and then you get 3 mana the following turn. You draw a card your next turn and get 3 mana the following turn. You do this. It's feast and famine. It's very flavorful for the comparison of the Nile River in Egypt, but as a card itself, it's just kind of odd. Very strange, and I don't know if this will see any kind of play other than limited and draft. But getting 3 mana is good, guys, and getting a card the other turn is also good. So this might see like an Eldrazi deck for now. Although a Simic Eldrazi deck, I'm not really sure. But I do think it's an interesting card. I'm not so sure about the playability in standard. But in draft and in limited, getting mana and getting cards is always good. Moving on to a camel, finally! We've got Supply Caravan for 4 colorless and 1 white mana. It's a 3/5 camel. When Supply Caravan enters the battlefield, if you control a tapped creature, create a 1/1 white warrior token with vigilance. So for 5 mana, you've got a 5/6 spread across 2 creatures. Not bad. Good limited and draft card. Never gonna see standard play unless someone wants to build a camel deck. That would be really cool. But I do think this is a fine card for limited. It feels like it's gonna slot nicely into a red-white limited exert deck. Moving on to a red creature, we've got Nimbleblade Kurna is a 1 colorless and 1 red mana Jackal Warrior with 1 strength and 3 toughness. And its ability is Prowess. Not a Monastery Swiftspear obviously, but still a very good card. And being able to cast some spells, turning it into a 2/4 and be able to swing in with a 2/4 is pretty good. I think this is a fine limited card, and you should probably pick it in the mid-tier area for your draft, especially if you have a lot of burn cards in your hand, or combat tricks as you know will be able to pump this creature. It's not gonna see any standard play, so don't worry about that, unless there's like a Jackal deck that's gonna come out. But other than that, I don't see this being anywhere outside of draft and sealed. And moving on to a white creature, we've got Winged Shepherd for 3 colorless and 1 white mana. It's a 3/3 angel with flying and vigilance, and for 1 white mana, it has cycling. This is a fine card, again, a good limited and draft pick. Flying is very good in draft and in limited, so be sure to pick it if you have it. And cycling for 1 white mana is also very good. Especially if you draw this card early in the game and you just can't play it or you don't want to use it right now, just cycle it away and get a card back. Very useful. But this slightly more expensive Sarah Angel will do some work in limited and in draft. No standard play. But that's alright. Not every card is for standard, but every card is for limited and in draft. But that's all I've got today, guys. What did you think of the cards? I'm actually really excited to see what Angel of Sanctions is going to do for the format. I think having a flying Oblivion Ring with recursion is actually pretty ridiculous, and I do think that may see some standard play alongside Avacyn, things like that. But like the video if you liked it, leave a comment below, let me know what your thoughts are on the card spoiled today, and subscribe for MTG Traders for more videos in the future. We'll see you guys next week.